Hi, I'm Pam, and we are going to be growing your garden. This segment will be starting your spring seeds. So the first and most important thing about growing your garden in the spring is preparing your soil. And I have mixed half garden soil or potting soil and half organic material. And another thing you want to watch for when you're starting is to make sure you have holes for the drainage for all the water to escape. If you don't, then your seeds will rot, and that's not what we're after. So we are going to fill these trays. There are 72 individual cells here that you can have 72 little baby plants growing. But we're just going to smooth this off. Today I've chosen to plant pansies. Pansies are an annual, and they survive the cold temperatures. So since this is early spring and we want to have some flowers in spring, I think these are the best choice to plant for right now. So on the back is always directions on how to plant your seeds. It's very important that you read these so that you know exactly how to plant and that you're going to have success with your flowers. So this says it germinates in 7 to 14 days. You only sow it an 1/8 of an inch deep, which is not a lot of soil. These are fairly tiny little seeds. And I'm going to smooth this off a little bit because I probably filled it up just a little bit too much. So we got half of our bed made here. And these are like tiny little baby seeds. So you need to be really careful and kind of put some in your hand and then just sprinkle them in each little cell. Sometimes you're going to get more than others, and that's okay. So there's that one. And we're going to open another package here. And we're going to finish planting. So we're going to pat this down just a smidgen. And then we're going to take a little bit of soil, just a very little bit, because it only says an 1/8 of an inch. Just enough to cover them, because if you plant seeds too deep, they have to grow through all that soil, and they don't do very well. They can't survive because they only have a certain amount of food to make them to grow. So then we have a water bottle. And we're just going to spritz this a little bit and moisten the soil. And then another important part is that you're making kind of a tiny little greenhouse. And we're going to put the cover on it. And ideally, this needs to go, if you have an area that's very warm, or I even use a growing mat. And it's a very thin plastic material that has heating elements that go through it. And then you set it down on top of that, and then it maintains like a 70 degree temperature. And this is going to help your seeds germinate. We will move that to that area later. The next part is going to be how to actually plant things in pots. Like I said earlier, the pots need to have holes in them. And if you don't have a pot with a hole in it, I would not use it, because the water's going to pool up, and your seeds are going to die, or your plants are going to rot, and it's just not going to be good for your plant. So I have in my garden dug some jonquils and some hyacinths. So we are going to pot these, and then you can set it in and out of your house as the temperature warms up, and then, or you can even take it in your house, and you'll have beautiful flowers to look at. Hyacinths are very fragrant too, so I only chose 2. So when I went and dug this, I wanted to make sure I get enough roots. And also, if you want to wear gloves, I typically always wear gloves when I'm out working in the garden, especially if I'm really digging a lot in the soil. Just kind of keeps your hands kind of cleaner. And I think I've got a little bit too much soil there. And I'm going to break a little bit of this soil off so we can get it in this pot. I want this pot to look full. So you can see how the roots here have really grown over the winter. And these roots are going to make these flowers bloom. And right here you can see a bud. It's getting ready to come up out of the ground, and that's going to make your flower. You don't have to plant these all the way up to the top, just as long as the heads of these plants are covered with soil here. So I'm going to take my hyacinths, and I'm going to set those here on either side. And then we're going to take the soil, fill up our pot. You can water this a little bit now to get the soil settled out around there. I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of this water. Now you can see some of my roots are still sticking out here. So we want to cover those up. So there you have it. You can take some decorative moss to make it a little prettier and set around here. And there you are. There are all kinds of garden seeds that you can use for planting flowers. Like I said, these are annuals. You can also plant perennials, which means they will come back once they're established year after year. So once you have planted a perennial and it survives the first year, chances are very good that it's going to come back the next year. You just need to follow the directions, cover it, mulch it in the winter if it needs to be, and you'll always have that plant growing. They last for many, many, many years. So we're going to move on to sweet potatoes. We've done the flowers, so now we're going to do a little bit of the vegetables. This is the time of year that you take your sweet potatoes. Now these sweet potatoes are anywhere between 2 and 3 years old. This is a mother plant that I grew in my garden that I keep. It's been very good to me. It's survived. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually break these stems off. And I chose a darker vase because when you choose a darker vase, the light doesn't get in it and it likes it a little bit better. So I'm just going to break these off and put them down in the water, and these will root. You'll have many, many roots coming off of these. And then in the spring, when it's time to actually plant your sweet potatoes in your garden, you don't have to go and buy them. You've got your slips right here. These are actually a Beauregard sweet potato, that are very good eating. So I'm just breaking these off, sticking them down in the water, and letting Mother Nature take over, and we're gonna have sweet potato slips here with lots and lots of roots on them. Now, I have discovered too, when I've planted these in my garden, they tend to die out. But don't despair. Just let them survive. They will come back. They will start growing, and in no time you'll have lots of green vegetation there. And they vine in a big area. So just let them be and grow. And then in the fall, when they, I'm thinking maybe end of September, 1st of October, you just go and dig the hill and you got sweet potatoes for the winter. Hi there. We're back again, and we are going to plant peonies. Peonies are actually do very best if you are digging them and planting them in the fall. But I came across these and I really wanted to start a Sarah Barnhart pink. So I'm gonna plant them in this pot because I don't want to keep them in the bag. So I've got my soil prepared here. And then after the temperature warms up, I'm gonna actually transplant those out into my permanent garden, because once they get established, you do not have to dig peonies anymore. So the trick about planting peonies is, here are the new growth coming up. They do not like to be planted very deep. So I'm basically just gonna lay this on top of the soil. I have 2 plants here. And it says the eyes should only be under the soil about 1 inch. So I'm actually going to set that down in a little deeper. So this was the soil that actually came in the bag, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pour it over the top. And we're going to fill it up a little bit more with some more soil. And once this weather warms up a little bit, and I can plant them out in the garden, like I said earlier, then they're gonna be put in a permanent home to live, and then you won't have to worry about planting your flowers or your peonies anymore. These will probably not bloom this year. It takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years for this root system to get established. And then in maybe 2 or 3 years, we'll have beautiful pink peonies. Another thing that people have asked me about is the ants on peonies. When peonies come up out of the ground and they form their flower buds, you will see ants crawling all over them. And the reason for that is that the peony bud is producing a sweet nectar. You don't have to have ants to produce the flowers. The ants are not gonna hurt the flowers. If you don't like the ants, when you cut your flowers, just rinse them off in some water, and the ants are just there because they're eating the nectar off of the flower bud. So we're gonna set this to the side. I have another pot here that I'm gonna do the same thing with. So we're gonna dig a little hole here, and we're gonna carefully remove these roots. Another thing I want to mention too is when you're planting, people think, oh, I'll remember what I planted. Well, my memory's not that good. So I would suggest that you take a marker. I just use a spoon, or a knife here, and take a marker and just mark what you planted. Most people will or some people can identify what plants look like when they come up out of the ground. But it's always nice to have like a little marker. So I'm just gonna write peony on here, and today's date. This is March the 2nd. So I'm just gonna set that down on the side here. It's also a good time to have the date so you'll know when you planted it and kind of compare about how it's doing for you. So those are the peony plants. Next, I want to show you something that you can do. These are tulips. Tulips come in a bulb, and all spring flowers, most of them in the bulb form, have to go through a chilling period, and it's about 12 weeks long. So what I did is last fall, when I bought my tulip bulbs, I wanted to have something really early. So on the side of my container here, I planted these on September the 18th. And I just stuck this pot with the bulbs in a refrigerator, and I left them there for about 3 months or 12 weeks. Then I pulled them out, and they started coming up out of the ground. And as you can see, we have purple tulips. I've really enjoyed our session today. So next time, come back and watch us with Growing with Pam.